Hello and welcome to pmclounge.com. In this video, we are talking about the first of the 12 project management principles. We have taken an overview of these principles in the past. I'll share a direct link to that video in the description below. But first link is always going to be a relevant article on this topic over at our official website, pmclounge.com. So if you're into reading articles, check that first link out. But if you want to know more about what this first principle is, then stick around. This is all about being a diligent, respectful and caring steward. All these 12 principles come from the PMBOK Guide edition 7, which is essentially a combination of two books. The first is the PMBOK Guide itself and the second is the Standard for Project Management. We have done several videos on the Standard for Project Management covering the topics of the Standard for Project Management. Check out the playlist in the description below. It will be the third link in the description below. Check that playlist out. These are also very important for your PMP exam. So without further ado, let's talk about the first of the 12 project management principles, and that is being a diligent, respectful and caring steward. So what does it say? It basically says be a diligent, respectful and caring steward. Now, one thing to note is that none of these 12 principles, we're just talking about the first one, but none of these 12 principles are, out of this world, or none of these are rocket science, right? These are not new concepts that you must learn just for the PMP exam. Even if you're not preparing for the PMP exam, and if you're a project manager, you should know these rules. And that is also one of the reasons why I think everyone should read the PMBOK Guide edition 7, because it contains stuff which you should anyways know regardless of whether or not you're preparing for the PMP exam. And in fact, if you go over these principles, you will realize that these are principles that everyone should follow, whether one is a project manager or not. But anyways, let's focus on principle 1. Be a diligent and respectful and caring steward. All right, let's move on and talk about what stewardship really is. Now, this word stewardship, it basically means to take care of something or manage something, right? This something in our context is going to be a project. Now, stewards act responsibility to carry out activities with integrity, care and trustworthiness. These three are important words. You're going to hear more about them as we move on. And stewards do all this while maintaining compliance with internal and external guidelines. Now, when you are working on a project, projects do not take place in isolation. There are internal guidelines, there are external guidelines. Internal as in guidelines within your organization. External could be government guidelines, right? So all of these are applicable, and this is something that stewards take care of. Finally, they also demonstrate a broad commitment to financial, social and environmental impacts of the projects that they work on. So a lot to do, right? As a steward, there's a lot that you need to take care of, and we are going to talk more about it. Moving on, a quick reminder, if you want to get yourselves the PMP certification, 50 days is all it takes. Head over to the link in the description and grab yourselves the 7-week PMP study plan. It's all free. All right, let's talk about stewardship responsibilities within the organization. You are going to see responsibilities outside the organization as well, but let's talk about responsibilities within the organization to begin with. All right, so operating in alignment with the organization's objectives, strategy, mission, vision and sustainment of long-term value. So whatever that you do, you manage projects, you need to operate in alignment with all of these. Now, this is something that is a stewardship responsibility, not necessarily the responsibility just of the project manager, because you could be the quality manager, you could be the development manager, the engineering manager, but you are still required to do something which is mentioned here, right? Operate in alignment. Now, respectful engagement of project team members, it may include their compensation, opportunities and fair treatment as well. Pretty self-explanatory. Diligent oversight of organizational finances, materials and other resources, followed by understanding the appropriate usage of authority, accountability, and responsibility. So these are all the responsibilities that belong to the steward. A good steward should take care of all of these within the organization, because none of these are external responsibilities, right? These are all stuff that are applicable to you within the organization. All right, pretty simple to understand. Let's talk about stewardship responsibilities outside the organization. Now, environmental sustainability is something that PMBOK 7 speaks often about, and this is something that has been part of the international discourse as well. So what is your project about? Is environmental sustainability something that is being taken care of in your project? All right, moving on. Organizations' use of materials and natural resources, something that you as a project manager, as a good steward, need to take care of. Organizations' relationship with external stakeholders like partners, vendors, it could be the government and others, right? So environmental sustainability and your use of natural resources and all is one part of it, but externally, when we are talking about responsibilities outside the organization, externally it is possible that there could be some sort of guidelines, some sort of governance applicable to your projects, because of which your external stakeholders will come into the picture. The government might have certain guidelines and your project need to adhere to it. Projects and organizations impact on markets, social community, and operating regions. Where do you operate? Are there any impact because of your projects? So these are all responsibilities of a steward, of a project manager outside the organization. So we looked into your responsibilities as a good steward within the organization as well as outside the organization. Now, in addition to these responsibilities, there are some duties which are both implicit as well as explicit that include, and these duties are of the stewards, of course. These are for your project managers. So, integrity. Stewards behave honestly and ethically. Pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory, something that you would do even if you were not a project manager, right? So stewards behave honestly and ethically. Now, you as a steward, you as a project manager, you need to serve as a role model. You need to build trust by living and demonstrating personal as well as organizational values. So if your organization has certain values, it could be honesty, it could be being ethical at all times, you need to display and demonstrate those values in your personal affairs as well. As a project manager, you also need to show empathy. You should be open to feedback, and your behavior should encourage that others also follow suit. Others also behave honestly and ethically, right? So that's what integrity is all about. Next is care. Stewards are fiduciaries of organizational matters in their charge. Now, fiduciary is basically a trustee. So, as a project manager, as a good steward, you are a trustee. Now, as a trustee, you oversee the project matters with same level of care as you would for your personal matters. That's what this duty is all about. Care for the environment is included. Care for sustainable use of natural resources, that is included. Now, this might require you, because if you're a project manager, this might require you as a project manager to consider the potential downsides of project outcomes as well, right? So this is something, when you take care of your duty of caring, you also take care of what your project outcome is going to be. What are the deliverables of your project, and are there any potential downsides? Care is also about creating transparent work environment. This is very, very important. You cannot be a one-man show, right? You need to create environment, a work environment that is transparent. You need to create open communication channels. Your project team members and even other stakeholders, they should be able to raise concerns without any fear of retribution. That is what care is all about. That is what this duty of care is all about. All right, moving on. Next is trustworthiness. Now, stewards represent themselves as well as their roles, their authority, and their project team accurately both inside and outside the organization. And if you read this again, that is how you build trust, right? You represent everyone accurately, and that's how people will start to trust you. Now, this can include proactively identifying conflicts between personal and organizations or clients' interest as well, because conflict of interest can result in a breach of trust. So, when we focus on trustworthiness, these are the kind of things that we need to look for. And there are several companies out there, they have regular trainings around trustworthiness, around breach of trust, around conflict of interest, right? So that's the third duty that you as a steward, as a good steward, as a good project manager need to adhere to. And finally, the last one is compliance. It's all about compliance, right? Stewards comply with laws, rules, regulations, and requirements within or outside the organization. So these laws, rules, regulations, these could be from within your organization or from outside your organization. It could be a government regulation, right? But you as a project manager need to make sure that you are compliant. Now, good stewards, good project managers, they seek ways to integrate compliance into your project culture itself. So you don't have to treat compliance as a, as an alien object that, okay, now it's time to be compliant, so let's do this, right? You introduce compliance within your project culture itself. And if required, you can take directions. If required, you can take counselings as necessary if there are any conflicting guidelines between your project and what you see maybe external to your project. So that's the scope of compliance. I hope all these four are clear: integrity, care, trustworthiness, and compliance. Moving on, let's talk about how more and more organizations are taking a holistic approach. Now, you should think of your projects as a good project manager, as a good steward. You should think of your projects not in sequential terms of financial aspects, as if the financial aspect is most important for your project and then next comes social aspect. We'll not give as much importance to social aspects as we would to financial aspects. Or let's say you treat technical aspects to be more important than environmental aspects, right? So you are essentially treating your project in sequential terms here. This is not the right approach. The right approach is to take a holistic approach where all your financial aspects, your technical aspects, your environmental aspects, your social aspects, all of these have the same importance. And this is what a good steward is supposed to do. End of the day, the world is interconnected. And there are finite resources, right? So you could be constructing, let's say, a metro train project. You could be working on a metro train project, and it is going to help urban mobility and it is going to reduce traffic. But also consider the number of trees that you are going to replace with concrete pillars. So how can you achieve a balance? That is what holistic approach is all about. So projects affect the lives of everyone, those involved in delivery of the project, as well as those who make use of the deliverables of your project. And thus the duties that we talked about, that is integrity, care, trustworthiness, and compliance, these are a must for a good steward. So that's all in this video. I hope you got value out of it and were able to understand the first principle. Like, share, subscribe. If you like our work, consider contributing at pmclounge.com/contribute or make use of the thanks button on YouTube. Thank you and have a nice day.